I moved into my new apartment just a few nights ago. It was cozy and had a vintage feel, with creaky wooden floors and oversized windows. I thought it would be a nice change after my long relationship ended. I could finally have my own space and a little solitude. The first night went smoothly. I settled in, unpacking boxes and arranging my art supplies. I was tired but happy. But later, as I sat on the couch with my laptop, I felt a chill sweep through the living room. It was strange, the heating was on, and I ignored it at first. Then I heard a faint tapping sound on the window. It made me uneasy. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just the wind. A few nights later, the tapping came again. I looked out the window but saw nothing. The street was empty, just dark and quiet. I told myself it was nothing to worry about. But that chill stuck with me. At night, I often heard soft shuffling noises, like footsteps creeping up and down the hallway. I tried to convince myself it was old building noises. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. One evening, I turned off my lights and sat quietly in the dark. I wanted to see if I could pinpoint the sounds. The moon was full, bathing everything in a silver glow. It was beautiful. But then I saw movement outside my window. A shadow flickered past. I jumped, my heart racing. I went to the window and pulled the curtain aside, but there was nothing there again. I felt silly, but my skin was crawling. The next night, I heard the noises again. This time, they felt closer. I got up, my heart pounding louder than before. I walked toward the noise, hoping to catch whatever it was. As I turned a corner, I thought I saw a figure stand at the other end of the hallway. It vanished as quickly as it appeared. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Was I just imagining things? I kept telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks. The apartment had a lot of quirks. But then I started to notice other odd things. My drawing supplies would be moved when I left the room. I could have sworn I'd left them on my desk, but then found them on the floor. I felt a nagging at the back of my mind. Was someone or something in my space? On the last night, everything escalated. I woke suddenly to a soft tapping again. I sat up, eyes wide. I glanced out the window. There, right by the light, I saw a face staring back at me. As soon as I blinked, it was gone. I felt a scream rise in my throat, but I couldn't make a sound. Standing there, I swore it was a woman's face. But when I called out, "Hello?" all I heard was my own echo. Millions of thoughts raced through my head. Why was I here? Was I alone? Was I really going crazy? The unsettling feeling tightened in my chest. That's when I realized I hadn't been alone at all. I stumbled back from the window and felt my phone slip from my hand. As it fell, a muffled giggle filled the room, echoing with the sound of creaking floors. I froze. I stood there, frozen with fear. The sound of that giggle echoed in my ears, a high-pitched, chilling laugh that seemed to bounce off the walls. I glanced around the room, my heart racing. The shadows felt deeper now, as if they were alive, hiding corners and secrets. I quickly picked up my phone, flicking on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing my empty living room. But that laugh didn't fade. It lingered like a memory I couldn't shake. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, and decided I needed to get out of that apartment for a while. I grabbed my jacket and swiped my keys from the table. I wasn't staying here another second. As I stepped out into the hallway, the chill intensified. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting erratic waves of light that danced menacingly on the walls. I hurried toward the stairs, my footsteps echoing louder than expected. Each step felt heavy and uncertain. I had never been afraid of the dark before, but tonight was different. With every creak of the wooden stairs beneath me, I imagined something lurking just behind me. At the bottom, I burst through the exit door and was greeted by the fresh air. I needed to clear my mind, find a distraction. I walked down the street, searching for a 24-hour cafe or anything that felt safe. The city was quiet, the night wrapped around me like a thick, suffocating blanket. As I strolled, I thought about the woman's face at the window. What had I seen? There was something familiar about it, but I couldn't place it. I shook my head. I needed to focus on something else, anything else. After a short walk, I found a small diner with a blinking neon sign. I stepped inside, the warmth enveloping me like a hug. I ordered a coffee and sat in the far corner, hoping the buzz of the diner would drown out my thoughts. But the chatter around me only reminded me of my isolation. I glanced at my phone, wondering if I should call someone. Maybe my old friends could help me feel less alone, less haunted. Just then, I heard a tap on the window. I flinched, my heart pounding. I looked up and saw a reflection staring back at me. My own face, pale and drawn, illuminated by the diner lights. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, when I felt a sudden prick of unease. I turned around, scanning the room. That's when I saw it, the woman from my apartment, standing at the entrance of the diner. She was staring directly at me, her expression unreadable. I blinked, convinced my mind was playing tricks. But there she stood, the same wild hair, the same dark eyes. My heart raced as I realized I wasn't imagining things. She opened her mouth, but before I could hear what she said, the lights in the diner flickered violently, plunging us into temporary darkness. When the lights returned, she was gone. Suddenly, I felt a heavy pressure on my chest. I got up, leaving my half-finished coffee behind. I had to go back to my apartment. I had to confront whatever that was, whatever she was. My heart raced not from fear, but from a burgeoning determination. I wasn't going to let this thing control my life any longer. As I walked back, the night felt darker. My mind was racing with questions. Why was she appearing now? And what connection did she have to me? The answers seemed to linger just out of reach. The feeling of being watched returned, stronger than ever. I knew this wasn't over. I stepped back into my apartment, a chill running through me. The door creaked ominously as I closed it behind me. I checked my phone again, hoping for a message or a distraction. Nothing. Just the darkness pressing around me, suffocating. I switched on the light, but it only drove the shadows deeper into the corners. I took a deep breath. If I wanted answers, I had to face whatever this was. I moved cautiously into the living room, scanning every inch of the space. The giggle echoed again in my mind. It felt taunting, like a riddle I couldn't solve. I wasn't just scared, I was angry. Why me? Flipping on my TV, I planned to drown out my thoughts with noise. I flipped through channels, but nothing caught my interest. Each flicker on the screen felt like a reminder of how alone I truly was. That's when I noticed the reflection in the darkened glass of the window behind me. I froze. Swallowing hard, I slowly turned. My heart raced at the thought of seeing her again, but instead I was met by the empty space behind me, the reflection just my own. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. But as I turned back to the TV, I felt it like a gaze boring into my back. Panic set in. I hurried to the window, peering through the blinds. My heart pounded in my ears. The street below was empty, the dim streetlights casting lonely pools of light along the pavement. But I couldn't shake the feeling. There was something outside, watching me. Just as I was about to step away from the window, I saw it. A fleeting shadow darted past the street lamp, quick and unnervingly unnatural. My breath caught in my throat. Had I seen that right? I strained my eyes, hoping to catch another glimpse. Nothing. Just darkness. I backed away from the window, the weight of dread settling heavy on my shoulders. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to escape this place that was becoming a cage. But I pushed that thought aside. I couldn't show fear. I had to get to the bottom of this. I remembered something. My grandmother had told me about old family photos buried in the attic. She always mentioned some connections. Maybe there was more to this haunting than just a mere vision. I gunned for the door leading to the attic stairs, uncertain of what I might find. The thought of uncovering hidden truths stirred both fear and curiosity within me. As I climbed up, the wooden steps creaked, echoing in the silence. The attic was a different world, dusty, filled with my family's forgotten memories. I searched frantically, moving boxes and old trunks, chasing the edges of memory. That's when I stumbled upon a small, ornate box. My heart raced as I opened it. Inside lay old photographs, yellowed and frayed at the edges. I sifted through them, faces I hardly recognized, but there was something. A familiar face appeared, but it wasn't just familiarity. I gasped, the box slipping from my hands. The woman from my apartment, the same wild hair and dark eyes, stared back at me in a faded photograph. A wave of shock washed over me. Who was she? Before I could process the revelation, the temperature in the attic dropped sharply. The shadows twisted ominously around me. I felt the unmistakable presence of someone behind me. Turn around, a whisper floated through the air, sending chills down my spine. I froze, staring at the photograph in disbelief. I knew then that this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The whisper hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could feel my pulse quicken, a thudding echo in my ears that drowned out everything else. The darkness around me felt alive, watching, waiting. I turned slowly, palms clammy and heart racing. The attic was still, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I fought against the dread creeping up my spine. Who's there? My voice was shaky but loud enough to break the silence. Nothing answered but the soft rustle of dust motes floating in the stale air. I felt foolish, demanding a response from shadows, but I couldn't help it. I needed to know. Then I saw it, a faint shimmer at the edge of my vision. It was like a ripple in the air, ghostly and unsettling. I squinted, trying to focus, but as soon as I turned my head, it vanished. I rubbed my eyes, questioning my own sanity. Maybe it was just the attic's musty atmosphere playing tricks on me. But then I noticed something else. One of the old trunks had shifted ever so slightly, its lid now partially open. I hadn't touched it. The urge to run washed over me, but I pushed it down. I had come here for answers, and I wasn't leaving without them. I approached the trunk cautiously, my breath shallow. With trembling hands, I pushed the lid open all the way. Inside were more photos, similar to the ornate box. I reached in, my fingers brushing against the surface of something smooth. As I pulled it out, I realized it was a small mirror, framed elegantly, but covered in a layer of dust. Holding it up, the mirror reflected my wide eyes and fearful face. Whoever that woman was in the photos, she was somehow linked to this. I turned the mirror towards the dim light filtering in from the attic window, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flash of movement behind me in the reflection. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just empty space, stretching into darkness. My heart raced even faster. The anger I felt earlier was now overwhelming fear. I had to leave. This attic held too many mysteries that I wasn't ready to face. Just as I turned to make my escape, the whispers returned, clearer this time, a chorus that seemed to swirl around me. You haven't even begun, dear. I stumbled back, my grip on the mirror loosening. It slipped from my fingers and shattered on the wooden floor, sending shards flying. A panic surged in me as I hit the ground, heart pounding. The soft giggles I had heard before returned, echoing against the walls, louder and more menacing than before. Before I could regain my footing, a gust of cold air swept through the attic. The box of photographs blew over, scattering memories everywhere, as shadows pooled around my feet. I could feel the darkness closing in again, and I knew I had to get out. But as I scrambled to my feet, I noticed something glimmering among the shards of the broken mirror. A glimpse of silver caught my eye, a tiny piece that looked like an inscription. I reached down, heart hammering in my chest, and closed my fingers around it. That S when I heard it, a voice, soft but insistent, echoing in my mind. Find me. I inhaled sharply. The words ignited something in me. Before I knew it, I was racing down the attic stairs, fear driving me forward. I had to find out who she was, what she wanted. I knew I was in deeper than I ever intended. But back in the safety of my apartment, I could no longer ignore the call to uncover what lay behind the shadows. The drive back felt surreal. My mind raced with what I had just experienced. Each curve of the road seemed to distort reality, blending the mundane with the extraordinary. I was just an ordinary person, wasn't I? Who was that woman, and what did she mean by find me? Once I stepped through the door of my apartment, I slammed it shut behind me, as if that would keep whatever I had encountered at bay. My heart was still pounding, and I leaned against the door, taking deep, shaky breaths. I dropped my bag on the floor, my thoughts racing. I needed to focus. The piece of silver I had found was now in my pocket, pressing against me like a secret. It felt heavier than it should, but lighter than the fear swirling in my chest. I pulled it out and examined it in the dim light of my living room. The inscription was etched in neat letters, beneath the light, "I am yours." I turned the fragment over, hoping for more, but there was nothing else. Whatever this meant, it felt urgent, personal. My phone buzzed, breaking through the spiraling thoughts. It was a text from my friend Kelly, asking if I wanted to join her for dinner. I hesitated, but then I remembered the whispers and laughter. I couldn't face it alone. I needed a distraction. "Sure, I'll be there in 30, I replied, stashing the silver piece back into my pocket. As I grabbed my jacket, I glanced at the clock. The evening light was fading, and the shadows in my apartment lengthened, stretching like fingers that reached out to touch me. On my way to Kelly's, I tried to shake off the unease. Maybe it was just my imagination. I laughed grimly at the idea. After all, it was probably just some old family drama tied to that attic. Yet, a part of me knew better. Dinner was a blur of laughter and warmth, but the tension hung at the edges of my mind. I found myself staring into space, trying to suppress the nagging feeling that something was wrong. If only I could shake off the weight of that broken mirror and the scattered photos. It was like they were competing for real estate in my thoughts. When I finally got home, I was greeted by an eerie silence. The familiar buzz of city life outside my window felt distant, and it added to the isolation pressing down on me. I tried to distract myself by flipping through channels on the TV, but nothing held my attention. Then, just as I started to believe that maybe everything was okay, my phone buzzed again, a notification. It was a voicemail from an unknown number. I felt a chill as I pressed play. "Find the light, and I will show you," a voice whispered, the same voice I'd heard before in the attic. My blood turned cold. The whispers were back, now lurking in my safe space. I looked around my apartment, my heartbeat echoing louder than the words. I was not alone. And then, all the lights flickered out. Darkness enveloped me, smothering and thick. Just when I thought I couldn't feel more afraid, I heard it again, a soft giggle, like that of a child, reverberating within the shadows. Someone was in the house. I froze, my body tense as I scanned the darkened room. Every corner felt like an invitation for something to emerge, something I could not see. I took a step back, pressing my body against the door, but the laughter echoed again. It was closer this time, twisting my nerves tighter. I darted towards the kitchen, my mind racing through a list of options. I needed a weapon, something for defense. I grabbed a heavy flashlight from the counter, its weight surprisingly reassuring. The beam cut through the darkness as I switched it on, illuminating fragments of my living room. But the shadows danced away from the light, teasing me. I took a deep breath, stepping cautiously toward the source of the laughter. "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice sounded weak, barely a whisper against the oppressive silence. I hated how small it felt. No answer came, just the echo of my words fading into nothing. I walked past the couch, heart thrumming. The giggling stopped, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I edged toward the hallway, catching a glimpse of the bathroom door. It was slightly ajar, a dark void that seemed to beckon. "Stay calm, just check it," I told myself, forcing my feet to move forward. With the flashlight held high, I nudged the door open. The bathroom was empty, the air stale, but then I noticed something that made my stomach drop: a reflection in the mirror above the sink. It was a brief flicker, a glimpse of movement behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing. Only shadows and silence. "You're losing it," I murmured, trying to convince myself. I stepped back into the living room, squinting toward the windows. The streetlights were glowing outside, casting long shadows through the glass. That was when I caught sight of it again, a flash of white in the darkness. Panic surged anew, driving me to the window, my pulse racing. I pulled back the curtain. Outside, everything looked normal. Cars passed by, the street was quiet. I shook my head, frustrated by my own fear. Maybe the strange events had messed with my mind. I needed to simply get to bed. As I turned away, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. From behind me, someone whispered, "Find the light." Threads of recognition struck me, a repetition of the voicemail. The voice was childlike, yet unsettling. I whipped around, but nothing was there. I took a breath and decided to confront whatever it was. "Listen," I shouted, my voice stronger now. "If you want something, just show yourself." Silence met my demand. For a moment, everything felt frozen. Then, the bathroom door creaked open wider, as if inviting me to follow. I didn't want to, but some instinct pushed me toward it. I stepped carefully down the hallway, the flashlight beam quivering in front of me, illuminating the floor below. That's when I saw it, a small piece of paper, half tucked beneath the bathroom mat. I knelt down, my pulse racing with anticipation. Flipping it over revealed a message scrawled in uneven handwriting. It read, "The light reveals all." My heart sank. What did that mean? Before I could process further, the temperature in the room dropped. And then my phone buzzed again, cutting through the tension like a knife. I stared at it in terror, waiting to see who had reached out this time. But as I turned my gaze back to the hallway, it darkened. The shadows pressed in on me, hungry. I was not alone, and everything was changing. I hesitated, the words on the paper burning in the back of my mind. The light reveals all. What did that even mean? I pushed the thought aside, I had to focus. I needed to get out of the hallway and away from whatever was lurking in the shadows. I turned back to the kitchen, still clutching the flashlight like a lifeline. My heart raced as I faced the glowing screen of my phone. The notification was a new message, but I didn't have the courage to look at it just yet. I flicked the flashlight off, deciding to keep my surroundings lit using only its beam. The darkness felt heavier without the added glow of my phone. I took a deep breath, then pointed the light toward the living room, revealing the familiar layout. My couch, my coffee table, the old rug, all mundane, yet they now felt like a stage for sinister happenings. I stepped into the room, feeling the cold air cling to my skin. The emptiness was oppressive, so I focused on something, anything, to push away the dread. I needed answers, I needed to know what was happening. Suddenly, another giggle echoed, slicing through the silence. My pulse quickened as I swung the flashlight toward the sound. Just ahead of me, the shadows shifted in a way that felt intentional. I raised the beam, scanning the perimeter of the space in frantic sprints. And then I saw it again, a flash of white near the corner of my eye. I turned, but it vanished whenever I focused. It was like a game, a cruel game where I was the unwilling participant. I spoke into the darkness, "Show yourself." My voice cracked at the edges, wavering with doubt and fear. As silence enveloped me once more, I felt a sudden pull, a gentle push from behind. I glanced around, uncertain. My gut twisted. I wanted to run outside, to breathe in the safety of the open air, but I couldn't. Something was compelling me to stay, to face the unknown in my own home. I retraced my steps back to the bathroom, compelled by the message beneath the mat. The light reveals all. It felt important, I just didn't know in what way. I shone the flashlight toward the mirror, half expecting to see a face behind me, something lurking with malicious intent. Instead, the reflection caught my eye in a different way. The light illuminated the edges of the sink, revealing something sharp, a small shard of glass, half hidden under the bath mat. I bent down, my heart racing anew. Just as I reached for it, the air shifted, and the temperature plummeted further. A shrill whisper broke the tension. "You need to look closer." I froze, a chill crawling up my spine. The voice was different this time, harsher. The flashlight flickered, the beam wavering in my hands as the shadows crept closer. Before I could react, the lights in the house flickered, plunging me into darkness. My breath quickened, panic gripping me. I was not alone, and now everything was slipping away. Then the front door slammed open, and a gust of wind filled the hallway. I turned, blinded by the darkness, my heart pounding wildly. "Who's there?" I shouted, desperation rising in my voice. Nothing answered. The shadows closed in, and I felt it, a presence, watching, waiting for me to unravel. I felt the rush of air pull past me, and instinct kicked in. I had to get out, but my legs felt glued to the floor. The shadows flickered in my peripheral vision, and every second felt like an eternity. I gathered enough courage to step forward, the beam of my flashlight slicing through the heavy darkness in the direction of the front door. It swung open wider, creaking like a warning. I squinted, trying to discern shapes. Outside, nothing but the blackness of night greeted me. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out any other sound. Then I heard it again, a soft giggle, this time more playful, taunting. It came from the living room, drawing me back toward the heart of the house. I didn't want to go, but there was a magnetic pull, as if something beyond my control pushed me closer. I stepped hesitantly into the living room. The light from my flashlight revealed dusty furnishings and still shadows, but now there was another sound, scratching, faint and insistent. It crawled into my head, making my skin prickle. "Hello?" I called, voice steady yet strained. The silence that followed was suffocating. I took a breath, forcing myself to move toward the source of the noise by the television cabinet. Each step felt monumental, weighed down by the fear that something would jump out at me. I aimed the flashlight onto the floor and noticed a small item partially hidden behind the cabinet. I crouched down, flipping the beam over the object. My heart sank as I picked up a child's toy, a tiny plush bear, its button eyes staring blankly. I didn't remember it being here. As I held it up, a flicker on the wall behind me caught my eye. I turned but saw nothing new. The air thickened, making me feel like I was drowning, and I realized I hadn't breathed properly in what felt like ages. The whisper echoed again, closer this time. "We see you." Chills raced down my spine. My grip on the flashlight tightened, the beam nearly shaking with the intensity of my fear. I swung it wildly around the room, desperate for anything other than the empty space around me. Then, from the corner of my eye, something moved. A shadow darted past the window, disappearing just as quickly. I turned to the glass, heart racing. Was someone there? I dashed toward the window, pulling back the curtain. Nothing. Just the dark expanse of my yard, where the moonlight barely penetrated. But then I saw it, right at the edge of the trees. A figure, indistinct but clearly watching, standing still as stone. I couldn't make out any features, just an outline against the night. I gasped, stumbling backward in panic. My world narrowed to the sound of my breathing and the growing echo of that relentless giggle. I felt trapped within my own home, with the shadows closing in again. I forced myself to look at the toy in my hand. "Where did you come from?" I murmured aloud, but the answer never came. The tingle of dread simmered, and I understood this wasn't just a game. The weight of unseen eyes bore down upon me, a presence that had been here far longer than I had. That's when I saw it, a reflection in the glass of the cabinet. Something shifting just behind me, not my own shadow. My breath caught. I spun around, but there was only darkness. And then I realized the truth. I was never alone. I stumbled back, panic gripping me tight. The toy bear slipped from my fingers, landing softly on the dusty carpet. I turned once more, searching the darkness behind me, sensing that something lurked just out of sight. My breath felt shallow, each inhale struggling against a rising tide of fear. "Who's there?" I shouted, the quiver in my voice betraying my bravado. Another echo of that giggle, intoxicating and sinister, danced on the air, coiling around me. I felt like I was being drawn into a game, one that I didn't willingly sign up for. The weight of uncertainty pressed hard against my chest. I backed away from the lingering shadows, heading towards the hallway. A flicker of light from the kitchen drew me like a moth to a flame. Cautiously, I approached, the beam of my flashlight acting as my only shield. As I reached the doorframe, I saw that the kitchen light was on a stark contrast to the darkness that enveloped the living room. Nothing appeared out of place except for a peculiar sight on the counter. A small plate with crumbs sat beside an empty cup, the remnants of something that hadn't been there the last time I was awake. Did I leave that out? I murmured to myself, unease pooling in my gut. My hands trembled as I stepped inside. The faint scent of something sweet lingered in the air, drawing me closer, but my instincts screamed at me to flee. Suddenly, there was a soft thud from the other room, breaking the tense silence. I froze, the only sound the beating of my own heart. I couldn't stand still any longer. Whatever was happening in my house felt alive, and I had to uncover the source of it all. Stepping back into the living room, I swept the beam of my flashlight in every direction. I needed to establish dominion over my surroundings, to reassure myself I still belonged here. But the shadows danced, mockingly flickering against the walls. I felt vulnerable, exposed, like prey in the presence of something far more predatory. Just then, I caught the reflection in the glass cabinet again. My blood ran cold. There, just behind me, a pair of small hands reached out, pale and trembling. I spun around, but once more, there was only darkness. My mind raced, fighting to rationalize what I had seen. Was this some sort of cruel illusion? The giggle erupted again, now higher in pitch, as if joyously celebrating my panic. Then silence fell like a hammer. I could feel it, just behind me, the weight of something intangible pushing into my back. I whipped around, my flashlight beam flickering wildly, illuminating nothing but walls and furniture. "Stop it!" I shouted, anger cutting through my fear. I felt its presence retreat for just a moment, and I had a fleeting sense of control. "Show yourself." In the stillness, an unexpected calm washed over me. But that calm shattered when the lights flickered, and for one brief moment, the house plunged into darkness. My heart raced again as I spun back to face the living room. The flashlight ricocheted off the walls, a frantic attempt to pierce the shadows. And then, in the corner of my eye, I saw it. Tiny footprints, imprinted in the dust on the floor, leading straight toward the hallway. I was left standing there, frozen. Someone, or something, was in my home, leaving its mark without a trace. The revelation made my stomach drop, and I took a shaky step forward, compelled to follow. But something about the hallway felt sinister now. What if I was right? Something was waiting for me there, something I wasn't prepared to face. And yet, if I didn't confront it, would it come to find me instead? The tension in the air was thick as I took my first step down the hallway. Each creak of the floorboard seemed to echo loudly, taunting me as if the house itself were alive and watching. I aimed the flashlight ahead, its beam stretching long into the darkness, revealing nothing but the oppressive shadows that loomed at the edges. The tiny footprints lingered in my mind, etched in my memory more vividly than any other part of this night. I could practically feel the weight of their presence pulling me forward. I took another cautious step, feeling an unseen force binding me to the hallway. Then, out of nowhere, the giggle erupted again, ringing in my ears like a bell, but now it mixed with an unsettling chant that seemed to dance around me. Find the light, my pulse quickened, almost as if the house itself was urging me to move faster, to uncover what lay ahead. But with each step, the feeling of dread intensified. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught my attention. I turned to see a faint glow emanating from the bathroom. Taking a deep breath, I moved closer, that strange mix of fear and curiosity propelling me forward. I pushed open the door, and the light within was blinding, it felt almost alive. Inside, the mirror radiated a soft luminescence, transforming the mundane into something almost ethereal. The whispering escalated, a chorus of voices swirling around me. Look closer, find her, they called, echoing the words I had heard before. As I stepped into the bathroom, I was captivated by the mirror's glow, and a peculiar sensation surged through me, the feeling that something wanted me to see. I approached the mirror, my heart pounding against my ribs. As I leaned in closer, I noticed something in its depths, a flicker, a face, indistinct and faceless. My breath caught. It felt like a glimpse of the woman I had seen before. The urge to reach out flooded my senses, as if I could pull her from the reflection into my reality. Who are you? I whispered, entranced. But the only answer was the chorus of giggles rising to a crescendo, teasing, echoing through the small space. In that moment, the ground shook slightly, and the mirror's surface rippled like water. I stumbled back, heart racing, realizing I was teetering on the edge of something unfathomable. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and an icy breeze rushed past me, extinguishing the glow and plunging me into darkness once more. I fumbled for the flashlight, lunging towards the door. But before I could set foot into the hallway, I felt the unmistakable weight of a small hand gripping my ankle. Stunned, I looked down, but I saw nothing. Find the light. The voices chimed, now a chorus of urgency that buzzed around me. Panic surged anew as I pulled away from the grip. I burst back into the hallway, realizing I had to escape the oppressive silence before the shadows reclaimed me entirely. With each frantic step, I aimed the flashlight willy-nilly, the beam slicing through the dark, until it fell onto something that sent chill waves down my spine, the entrance to my living room, now darkened and empty. The shadows were lurking deeper and longer, waiting, watching from the corners, eager for my next move. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again, sending tremors through my hand. I almost considered running out and not looking back. But I hesitated, leaning against the wall, eyes darting. I had to know. With a shaky hand, I glanced at the screen. Another unknown number. With a racing heart, I pressed to listen, hoping for an inkling of clarity, or to confirm I was inadequate at least to understand. The voice came through, softer this time, almost a whisper of silk wrapped around jagged edges. Beneath the light, I am waiting, it said, the word solidifying like an icy anchor in my chest. The realization was piercing. This was not just a warning, it was an invitation, perhaps a plea. I had to confront whatever it was that had entwined itself with me, waiting just beyond reach, a distorted echo of my past whispering back to me. With renewed determination, I turned away. From the shadows of the living room, moving toward the narrow beam of light spilling from the bathroom. I wasn't going to let fear dictate my actions anymore. The voices swelled around me, urging me onward. I pushed through the doorway and faced the glowing mirror. "Show me," I declared, the fear replaced by a surge of fierce resolve. I needed answers. I was desperate to uncover what had been hidden in the depths of my family's past. But the mirror shimmered and shifted again, transforming from a reflection of my fearful self to that of the woman grief etched across her face, those dark eyes pleading. It was a haunting picture of sorrow. I gasped, realizing she wasn't a threat, she was a part of me, an echo waiting to be heard. As I reached out toward the mirror, a rush of energy drew me closer. The final touch could shatter the barrier between us, and in that moment, I could finally uncover the truth. Then, all at once, darkness flooded the room again, and I felt a rush of cool air envelop me. The giggles faded into silence. The mirror shattered, breaking the surface of connection that had kept me tethered to fear and uncertainty. I stepped back, breathless. The pulse of the house grew quiet. For every question I had, 1,000 more lingered without answers. But as I knelt on the floor, amidst the broken glass, I could still hear her voice faintly whispering in my ear, "Find the light." In that moment, I understood. I had survived this night. I had faced my fears, but the truth of the woman, of what she meant to me, was still buried beneath layers of history and shadows. As I left the bathroom, the remnants of her presence lingered, unfading. I realized this would always be a part of me. The deeper question remained: how would I move forward with the fragile light of her memory, intertwined with darkness? I stood still in the quiet, heart pounding, the echoes of laughter tracing my thoughts. I didn't have the answers, but I did know that this wasn't the end, it was only the beginning.